18 for public testimony.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Perry has opened public testimony. The chair calls on Senate Bill 18, Jonathan Covey. And we'll ask you to try to line up from left to right. We'll try to stay in order. My left, that'd be right to left for you. Jonathan Covey, Ken Moore. Chair calls Ken Moore. The chair calls Dustin Reinders. Dustin Reinders. The chair calls Shelby Evans. Shelby Evans. And the chair calls Bryce Lockheed Stanfield. So we're looking for Jonathan Covey, Ken Moore, Dustin Reinders, Shelby Evans, Bryce Lockheed Stanfield. Welcome to each witness, and we'll recognize you in turn, and then after we hear each of your testimony, then we'll open up the panel for questions to each one in case any members have. We're glad you're here. Regardless of your position, we want to hear from you. Your voices matter. And so we'll begin with Mr. Covey on my left, your right. Introduce yourself and give us your testimony.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. My name is Jonathan Covey. I have the honor of serving as the policy director for Texas Values. We're a legal and advocacy nonprofit in Texas that focuses on faith, family, and freedom. I have a law degree and a legal background in constitutional law. I'm testifying in favor of SB 18, and do want to thank the chair for bringing this bill. We have over 200,000 supporters in all 254 counties in Texas, and our supporters are deeply alarmed at the documented explosive growth in drag queen story hour events in public municipal libraries. We've been speaking out against these events for years and have many documented instances of the hypersexualized entertainment during these story hours. These events, of course, are normally geared towards children ages 3 to 11 years old. And many times we see that children are asked to participate in this entertainment of this event. There are videos of young children being asked to put dollar bills in underwear, young children being asked to strut or to dance, imitating drag queens, and it is exposing kids to hypersexualization at an early age and with devastating results. And it's not just libraries where these things occur, but the American Library Association has been a strong supporter of these events and has pushed libraries particularly aggressively. And research has shown time and time again that early sexualization creates a lot of issues later on into adulthood, including possibly becoming violent, facing problems with intimacy, depression, low self-esteem, eating disorders, diminished sexual health. Children are casualties of these events, and nothing is worth the price of the well-being of our children. So please support this measure.
Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Moore, welcome. Introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
Okay. My name is Ken Moore. I am here representing myself, and I am for this bill. There are reasons why we do not sell beer, cigarettes, and Playboy magazines to minors. There are reasons why we do not let them get tattoos or work in the sex industry. There are reasons why we have ratings for movies and TV shows. We recognize, or we used to recognize, children need to know what is normal and healthy before they're exposed to what is not normal. Children are inexperienced in this world. They're impressionable and easily influenced. Child soldiers in Sudan learned to be stone-cold killers. Young children in Thailand, both boys and girls, learned to be prostitutes. It's bad enough they're abused, but they come to believe that this is all normal and routine. They do not have the foundation of maturity to appreciate the evil of what they are doing and what's being done to them. They think nothing of it because they've never known anything different. They are children. Seeing men dressed up and acting like prostitutes is a wonderful example of what they do not need to see until their life experience equips them with the context to process it. They think nothing of it because they have never known anything different. It still astonishes me that we even have this conversation. Committee members, there are many dark places in this world for children. Texas libraries should not be among them. This bill goes a long way toward bringing back some sorely needed sanity to what our children see and hear in a place that should be for learning and growing. And I urge you to move it forward.
Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Reinders, welcome, introduce yourself, and go ahead.
Hi, I'm Dustin Reinders, the legal director at the Texas Civil Rights Project, and I'm here to oppose SB 18. After the last session, the Texas Civil Rights Project was honored to represent LGBT chambers of commerce, actors, and theaters from all around Texas in filing a First Amendment challenge to that unconstitutional law, which is still on hold. This bill is even more egregious in its unconstitutionality in that it doesn't even feign to target sexual or explicit or adult content, but merely cross-dressing. In free countries, there is no requirement to wear gender-conforming clothing. Children benefit from stories, performances, and spaces that reflect the full diversity of our communities. Children have watched people in drag since at least the 1500s, when every Shakespeare production included male actors in every female part. As a queer kid growing up in Texas in the 1980s, I still remember the first time I saw drag. It was Tom Hanks in the daytime network sitcom Bosom Buddies. I guess it took till the next decade for me to first time see a drag story hour, which would have been the great late Robin Williams read to children in Miss Doubtfire. As conservative cancel culture has reached a new peak in our state, trying to erase groups of Texans and eliminate speech and expression of all marginalized people for political points, I am thankful for the First Amendment. And I continue to trust Texas parents will be able to choose the activities they take their children to, supervise their children's safety, and provide the context they believe is necessary if their child has any questions, just like they have at every drag story hour. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Ms. Evans, introduce yourself. Welcome. Go ahead.
Hello, committee. My name is Shelby Evans. I'm testifying against SB 18. We're back again to push against bills that aim to restrict free speech for specific people and do nothing to protect children. No art form is inherently sexual or adult. Not movies, not TV, not books, not dancing, and not drag. There are books, even at your local library, that include violent storylines, depictions of war, or even spicy elven and vampire romance, all of which that are not appropriate for children and not on the kids' shelves. Like books, drag, movies, music, these are art forms that can be adapted for different audiences. The language in this bill targets drag performers and trans people. But what if I told you that I've done drag, feminine drag, as a woman? I looked like a fantastical princess. My costume gave me the silhouette of Dolly Parton with the big hair to match. Since I said I'm a woman, this appearance is considered appropriate for story time. But how could you or the librarian verify my gender? Are you suggesting my personal documents or body parts be checked? Does this bill require libraries to discriminate on the basis of sex and appearance? The language of the bill is unconstitutional, and it shows a glaring bias against the LGBTQIA people. And please, I ask you, please stop attacking a community. These are people doing a public service that benefits children and their families, and instead focus on legislating laws that actually protect children.
Thanks for your testimony. And, did I pronounce Lockie? Is it Lockie Stanfield? Did I get close?
It's Lakeith Stanfield.
Thank you.
All good.
Introduce yourself. Go ahead. Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Bryce Lakey. I'm speaking in opposition to SB 18. I represent myself. I am a disabled veteran, a proudly queer individual, a native Austinite and Texan. I am represented by Senator Judith Zaffarini, which sits on this committee. I urge her to also support me here today and oppose this proposed bill. When I took the oath to defend and protect the Constitution of the United States of America, I swore to uphold all of its constants without exception. I would like to remind this esteemed Senate that the Constitution guarantees our fundamental rights, including the freedom of speech. The proposed legislation before us represents a direct threat to these freedoms. Specifically, it undermines the protection of public spaces that serve all people without discrimination, as intended by our Constitution and our founding fathers. By advancing this bill into law, we risk an attack on these fundamental freedoms, and in doing so, violate the very oath that I, as well as all of you, have sworn to uphold in this very room. We must remember that our duty is to defend the rights and liberties enshrined in the Constitution for all Americans, and this bill stands in opposition to that duty, and I thank you for your time.
And thank you for your testimony. Senators, any questions for any of our witnesses on this panel? Thank each of you for being here. You're excused. The chair now calls Arwen Heilrain, Bridget Bandit, Cassian Nova, Alex Shawver, and Jamie Haynes. Again, we're looking for Arwen Heilrain, Bridget Bandit, Cassian Nova, Alex Shawver, and Jamie Haynes. And I wasn't trying to prescribe any particular order. We'll just go from my left to your right. And so introduce yourself and give us your testimony. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Arwen Heilrain. I'm representing myself, and I'm here to testify against SB 18. I have two moms. I've been surrounded by the queer community for most of my life, and my parents brought me to Pride events starting very young. When I saw drag queens at this event, I was shown that my family was not wrong, and that people being themselves was not something I should be ashamed of. I talked recently with my mom about the first time I ever saw a drag queen. She said I was just in awe of them. I really liked how colorful their outfits were. My little sister is 8 years old now, and I've been taking her to drag story times for most of her life. The first time we walked in, she stopped, she gasped, and she goes, "Oh my goodness, they are beautiful." She loves them. She begs for me to keep taking her to them. And it is my family's choice to take her to them. We choose that because we know what we're taking her to. We are taking her to listen to a children's book, to dance the hokey pokey, and to chat with someone in a pretty dress. Giving kids the opportunity to see people express themselves is not harming them. It's allowing them to understand that they are able to express themselves in wonderful ways. Not only that, but in 2024, Texas was ranked number 46 for worst literacy in the United States. I am a student at UT and I'm studying to be a teacher. I care deeply about children and their learning. Our children are not getting the education they need. However, instead of supporting public schools and public school teachers and kids, you are ripping public schools apart with school vouchers. You are allowing semi-automatic weapons in our state that are killing our children. You are allowing immigration officers into schools where they can deport children, and you are taking away events where they can learn. How is that protecting our children? I do not understand. If we were being honest with each other, this bill is not about protecting children. It's about furthering your careers that are built on discrimination and hate. I urge you to vote against this bill and vote to protect Texas children.
Thanks for your testimony. Welcome. Introduce yourself and go ahead.
Hello, my name is Bridget Bandit, and I'm speaking in opposition to SB 18. I'm a born and raised Texan and full-time drag queen. Previously, I have worked with children throughout my life as a swim instructor, teaching summer art camps, hosting children's birthday parties, and volunteering in my church as a youth group leader. Today, I occasionally host drag queen story times. These kinds of events don't differ much from the kind of work I did before, yet this bill would impact my ability to work with children simply based on a subjective and ill-defined expectation of how I should look. Would you consider what I'm wearing now, makeup, a wig, dress, and heels, as presenting as a woman? If so, my drag story times would be unaffected, as I am someone born female that many supporters of this bill would consider to be a woman. Why should I be able to continue the same kind of events with similar content and costumes, but not my male counterparts? This bill is more concerned with the sex and genitalia of the performers than the appropriateness of the costumes worn, the background of the performers, the content of the performances, or actually protecting children. Drag is simply a form of art, and like any form of art, can be produced by many different kinds of people and be modified for different kinds of audiences, just like actors who do both rated R and G movies. Drag story times are intentionally modified to be appropriate for children. Furthermore, members of this committee recently voted to pass a bill attempting to fund private schools under the guise of giving parents more options for their children's education. These parents should also be trusted with deciding what kind of entertainment is appropriate for their children. If you truly believe in parental choice, then you will not support this bill that restricts just that. Ultimately, this is a blatant attack on our First Amendment right of free speech and expression. Drag story times promote kindness, acceptance, and inclusivity, things that threaten those who seek power from hatred, intolerance, and division. So while y'all do that, I will continue my drag story times no matter what happens to this bill, and I encourage y'all to focus on issues affecting our Texas children rather than arguing about who is allowed to wear a dress and read a book at the library.
Thank you for your testimony. Welcome, introduce yourself, and go ahead.
My name is Cassia Nova. I'm a Texas drag king representing myself. I am speaking in opposition to SB 18 and ask that you do not let this bill move out of committee. When the Senate took up this issue with SB 1601, it could not properly produce a reason for banning drag storytime events, and it cannot produce a reason now. The bill lacks justification, substance, and more importantly, foresight. There's no justification for the implementation of this bill, nor is there any evidence suggesting this is a matter of concern for the Texas people. Parents, not politicians, ought to be the ones to decide what events to take their children to. Children benefit tremendously from the interpersonal and literary community generated by these events. Banning access to art and self-expression is an egregious overreach into the family sphere. Banning hardworking business owners like me from exercising our business and artists from doing our craft is an egregious overreach into personal and economic freedoms. The contents of this bill are insufficient and undefined. You each have a responsibility to explain to your constituents and legally define what exactly a man dressed as a woman or a woman dressed as a man means beyond vague gesturing. Finally, you have a responsibility to ask yourself what'll happen if this bill gets passed with this language. Ask yourself what you'll do when the bill targets the livelihoods of Texas artists, performers, and business owners. Under this bill, freedoms of expression and speech, family autonomy, and the freedom to dress as you want will be taken away from your constituents. Trans and queer Texans will be targeted for merely being present in libraries. Cis women will be demonized for wearing pantsuits, and cis men will be demonized for wearing clothing that is too form-fitting or too loose. Minority ethnic groups will be targeted for their cultural attire. Disabled individuals who must wear specific clothing to accommodate their accessibility needs will be targeted. Finally, ask yourself what exactly you're supposed to be doing on this committee. You have a duty to your constituents, to the state, and to the American Constitution to protect freedom of expression, speech, business, and the family. And you have a duty to strike down vague laws primed for abuse and confusion. Anything less than that is a failure of your office and your duties as a representative of the American people.
Thank you for your testimony. Welcome, introduce yourself, and go ahead.
Hello, Senator Hughes and members of the committee. My name is Alex Shaver. I am an educator, a student, and a lifelong Texan. I guess I'm really here to talk about Winnie the Pooh, but also to encourage everyone to oppose SB 18. What I have here is groundbreaking artistic technology. This is a functional prop. This is my musical score for an original musical setting of an original Winnie the Pooh tale from about 100 years ago. Winnie the Pooh never hurt any kid as far as I know, and we haven't banned that book. But I had a great concert. Some of my piano students came out with their parents. It was awesome, it was family friendly, and everyone on stage was some kind of queer, and we all managed to keep ourselves decent in front of the audience who loved the show. And to be honest, I have a dream to one day do a show like this in my hometown, Wichita Falls, at our public library, which would not be possible if SB 18 were to become law. To be honest, I'm trying not to lose too much sleep over it because we did have the ruling for SB 12 last session, where drag is free speech, that I expect to be protected still. But I'm just thinking about what we're actually doing here. I think that y'all might be putting on a little bit of a show, maybe not drag, but a drag show yourselves because you want support from constituents who do want stories like Winnie the Pooh set to live music banned from local libraries. But besides that, I just want to reiterate that it's not freedom if someone, because of a dress or a wig, even if they're just reading Winnie the Pooh and playing a trombone, is not allowed to experience storytelling and speak in front of kids. Storytelling is powerful free speech. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Welcome, introduce yourself, and go ahead.
Good morning, Chairman and committee members. My name is Jamie Haynes, and I'm from Canyon, Texas, right outside Amarillo in the Panhandle. I'm with Texans Wake Up, and I'm testifying for SB 18. Children have rights. Children have a natural right to their mother and father. Let me expand upon natural rights versus legal rights. Natural rights are those that are not dependent on the laws or customs of any particular culture. Legal rights are those bestowed onto a person by a given legal system. Justice is served when legal rights are informed by natural rights. 3 rules that make it a right. Number 1, a natural right exists pre-government. Number 2, no one has to provide you with a natural right. Number 3, a natural right is distributed equally. No one is born with a greater or lesser potential to exercise these rights. Children have a natural right to their parents and each of the very unique roles that both males and females play in a child's development. Biology does matter. Biological identity of each role begins to form for the child. Gender matters. Gender is not a social construct. Men and women offer distinct and complementary benefits to children. Men and women are different, and those differences greatly matter to kids. In this specific case of Drag Queen Story Hour, in the bending of sexual identities, are children to discard the roles that male and females play in their lives and society? Are children to endorse the political activism rooted in adult decisions to bend or flip sexual identities? No, absolutely not. Children should not have to sacrifice their natural rights to biological roles. In Drag Queen Story Hour, we are prioritizing adult desire above children's rights. Let me say that again. We are prioritizing adults' desire above children's natural rights. Adults need to do hard things so children don't have to. We want them, the children, to come before us in the minds of all adults. We must change our perspective and reorient the way adults view children. Adults should make the necessary sacrifices so children don't have to. SB 18 puts a pretty strong deterrent out there for public libraries to prioritize children's rights above the perceived needs, wants, or desires of adults by pulling funding. In SB 18, Texas is simply prioritizing children's natural rights. Thank you for protecting children. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Senators, any questions for any of our witnesses on this panel? Thank each of you for being here. You're excused. The chair now calls Dr. Brian Register. Dr. Brian Register. Megan Fairbanks. Megan Fairbanks. Johnny Vassallo. Johnny Vassallo. Maxine LaQueen. Maxine LaQueen. As we complete this panel, is Megan Fairbanks down here yet? I don't know all the witnesses. How about Quincy Craig? Looking for Quincy Craig. Come on down. And we'll call Cecilia Wood, if Cecilia is here. Bless you, Senator. Is Marshall Romero present, wishing to testify? Marshall Romero. All right, come on here and have a seat. There's a seat for you over there on that side. They're all equally uncomfortable, just right over there. And Dr. Register, we'll start with you. If you want to introduce yourself and give us your testimony, welcome.
Certainly, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Brian Register. I'm a philosopher. I've been teaching logic for more than 20 years. So I'd like to address a confused allegation about drag queen story hours. The argument we're given against the story hours is as follows. Story hours sexualize children. Sexualizing children is irredeemably bad. Therefore, the story hours do something irredeemably bad. But the reasoning turns on a fallacy of ambiguity. In one sense, story hours sexualize children in that they emphasize biological sex in the presence of children. However, dressing boys in pants and girls in skirts, sending them to different bathrooms and so forth, also sexualize children in the exact same sense. Bugs Bunny and drag sexualized most of us while we were growing up, and it doesn't seem to have done us much harm. Sexualizing children in that sense is not only not irredeemably bad, it isn't bad at all. In another sense, sexualizing children is grooming, which is the attempt to gain a child's assent and secrecy regarding inappropriate sexual conduct with them. That is indeed irredeemably bad, but it isn't what drag queen story hours do. So the law's justification is a simple fallacy, easily recognized by anyone interested in clear thinking. Please note a couple of contrasts. My performance here and now is highly sexualized. I'm wearing pants, my hair is short, and I have a beard. No one is checking the gallery to see to it, though no children are present to be corrupted by this sexualized performance. When I was a child, my parents took me to the Texas Renaissance Festival, in which I witnessed and participated in highly heterosexualized belly dancing performances, including placing coins on torsos and dollars in bras. No one objected, and no one objects. The only difference is that I was sexualized in a politically popular way according to a popular agenda of social control, while story hours are no more sexual but don't support any popular agenda of social control. Let local governments manage their facilities as they see fit, and let parents take their children to the wholesome entertainment of their choice.
Thanks for your testimony. Welcome, introduce yourself, and go ahead.
Good afternoon, distinguished committee members and Chairman Brian Hughes. My name is Maxine LaQueen. I am a proud trans woman and full-time drag entertainer. I am representing myself and testifying in opposition of Senate Bill 18. We find ourselves here once again, 2 years later, testifying against very similar bills targeting drag that were ruled unconstitutional in 2023 by a federal judge. And so I would like to pose a question to the committee here today. How many of y'all have actually attended a drag queen story time at a public library? Anyone? Anyone here? Just checking. It has become pretty evident that this committee takes a particularly hostile stance toward an art form that many of you have not personally experienced. Drag is a form of creative expression and a constitutionally protected exercise of free speech under the First Amendment. Drag Story Hour serves as an engaging and educational tool that encourages children to develop a love for reading. As reflected in my attire today, drag performers bring characters and stories to life in a way that fosters imagination and literacy. If the true concern here is the well-being of Texas children, I can say with absolute certainty that drag queens reading fairy tales are not a legitimate threat to them. However, the real threats, such as gun violence in schools and the banning of educational books, demand our urgent attention. Thank you for your time today, and I urge you to vote against this bill.
Thank you for your testimony. Welcome, introduce yourself, and go ahead.
Good afternoon, esteemed committee. My name is Yoni Vasayo, and I'm known in my community as the drag queen with a master's degree, Solange Vergara. So during my last year of graduate school, I worked on a research project exploring how public libraries can serve as covenants or mediators for the community. We found that libraries are crucial as places where people can gather, discuss, and plan, whether it's for town halls or even emergency response planning. From the research we have gathered, from hundreds of survey responses and the 40 interviews from librarians, library staff, and program directors, the consensus was clear. Libraries are essential community hubs and vital centers of information. While I understand the intention behind SB 18, I believe removing funding from public libraries is something that is truly harmful to our youth. Our children, particularly those in underserved communities, rely on libraries for resources and support. It is wrong to strip funding away from something like that over Drag Queen Storytime, a program that promotes literacy. Now, as someone who has hosted 4 Drag Queen Storytimes, I assure you these events are appropriate and educational. For example, one of the books that I read is entitled Miss Nelson is Missing, a story that teaches kids to be kind to their teachers. The activity that followed included students creating thank you cards and showing nothing but positivity in the drawing of the messages. The children saw my persona, Solange, as this comedic, whimsical, hilarious character, and they didn't really think much of it. And as noted from the drawings and the cards they made for me, they illustrated my 60s beehive wig to be twice the size of my torso, and they said, "Thank you, Señorita Solange Vergara." With all that in mind, y'all, I urge you to vote against SB 18. Libraries should not lose funding over something as wholesome and educational as Drag Queen Storytime. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Welcome, introduce yourself and go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Quincy Craig. I use they, them pronouns, and I am opposed to SB 18. I am here in my capacity as a queer person and as an active patron at my local library. I am strongly opposed to SB 18 because I believe it is harmful, unnecessary, and a potential tool of harassment for our public libraries. The bill says specifically a man dressed as a woman or a woman dressed as a man should be grounds for loss of funding for these places, and I believe that this is awful given that, I apologize, given what one considers dressing as a woman is entirely subjective and does not apply to every drag artist out there who do not necessarily emulate men or women. Thus, this legislation could be used to harass an unambiguous public good that provides many services and resources for the community that is served, as he just told us. Threatening the funding of libraries is a severe threat to the communities they serve at large, and all this over people simply dressed in unconventional clothing, or indeed clothing that's the one reporting this potentially simply is not a fan of. All of this while reading a storybook to children. For the good of our communities and for the freedom of expression for those entertaining children, I strongly oppose this bill and ask that all in the committee do so as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Welcome, introduce yourself and go ahead.
Good evening, House and members. My name is Marsha Romero, and I'm here to testify against Senate Bill 18. I'm a high school sophomore student, an advocate, and a transgender male and 16 years old, and a proud Texan who believes in freedom of expression, equal rights, and the power of public spaces like libraries to bring communities together. But let's be transparent. This bill isn't protecting children. It's about silencing and erasing LGBTQ people from public eye. Let's be honest, Senate Bill 18 isn't banning story hours. It's banning story hours where a person disregards outdated gender norms. A cisgender woman in a princess dress reading to kids, fine. But a drag queen in a glamorous gown? Suddenly, the entire library loses its funding. For what? This isn't about literacy, safety, or education. It is targeted, discriminatory censorship. And let's talk about the real issue here. This bill is unconstitutional. The First Amendment protects artistic expression, and drag is art. Drag is a performance, drag is storytelling. The government does not get to decide what kind of speech is acceptable based on gender presentation. If Texas starts punishing libraries for hosting an inclusive, expressive event, where does it end? Stop trying to hide your bigotry over a bill in guise of erasing funding when this chair knows what the true intentions and harm today's legislation will endorse. failed this bill. Beyond this blatant discrimination, Senate Bill 18 actively harms communities. Libraries are more than just bookshelves. They are safe spaces, technology hubs, and educational centers, especially for low-income families and marginalized communities. Defunding them over a single event strips Texans of resources they depend on. And for what? To make a political statement against LGBTQ+ people? And let's be clear, there's zero evidence that drag stories harm children. What does harm to children? Censorship, isolation, exclusion. Bills like this send a clear message to LGBTQ+ youth. You don't belong and you shouldn't be seen. That is cruel and that is unacceptable, and that's not what Texas should believe in. If this committee allows the government to dictate what kinds of performances are acceptable based on gender presentation, it will set a dangerous precedent. First, it's drag. Next, it's LGBTQ+ books. And after that, it's LGBTQ+ people. Senate Bill 18 is not about protecting children. It is about controlling narratives, erasing identities, and punishing inclusion. I urge you to reject this bill. Texas has real problems: education, healthcare, economic opportunity. But this is just a manufactured culture war that hurts real people. Let's do better.
Thanks for your testimony. Senators, any questions for any of our witnesses on this panel? Very well, you're excused. Thank you for being here. We are about to call the remaining witnesses who have registered to testify on Senate Bill 18, so I'll ask now if anyone, I'm about to call a few more, but if you wish to testify on, for, or against Senate Bill 18, please let us know so that we can get you set. The chair calls Megan Fairbanks. We had called Megan earlier and want to make sure that the opportunity is there to testify. Looking for Megan Fairbanks. The chair calls Hayden Cohen. Hayden Cohen. The chair calls Vanessa Savage. Vanessa Savage. So we're looking for Megan Fairbanks, Hayden Cohen, Vanessa Savage. Welcome. Have a seat anywhere you're comfortable. That's fine. And the chair calls Celia Wood. We had previously called Celia Wood. Want to see if Celia is around and wishing to testify. And there's Celia Wood right there. We were just talking about you. Come on down. Have a seat. If you wish to testify on Senate Bill 18, is there anyone else present wishing to testify on, for, or against Senate Bill 18? Okay. Do we come on down and have a seat? And before we start your testimony, let me ask your name.
Marto?
Sophia Marto. Great. So
Marto.
thank you. Before you leave, we're going to get just a little registration from you because we want to have a record of your testimony, okay?
I just gave it. Thank you.
Very good. In that case, let's begin with this panel, and we'll start over here and introduce yourself and give us your testimony. Welcome.
Thank you so much. My name's Hayden Cohen. I'm from Houston, Texas.
And Hayden, get a little closer to the microphone so we can hear you. Go ahead.
Never testified on the Senate floor.
Okay. You're welcome here. You take your time.
Thank you. As I said, my name's Hayden Cohen. I'm a student from Houston, Texas, and I'm here to urge you guys to oppose SB 18. It's a horrible bill, written horribly. First off, we gotta trust librarians, y'all. They're like the kindest, nicest people. They have master's degrees. They know what's appropriate for kids and what isn't. That is their literal job. I don't think that you guys know better than librarians on what's appropriate for kids to read and programming that's appropriate for them. Second, drag queens can cater their performance and events for kids. I'm 20. I'm 20. I watched drag queens all throughout high school, loved them, loved their performances. They weren't risque. They were fully clothed in safe spaces for queer kids because it was an art form and an expression. It expressed our history as queer people, and we enjoyed it. It didn't need to be explicit or risque. They knew they were performing in front of kids, and they tailored their performance to that. This wasn't a club, it wasn't a bar, you know, like there's a difference here. And I wouldn't want to take that performance and that art form away from kids right now. And then the second part I had was, part of the bill says that the issue is with a person being dressed in the opposite gender. Let me ask, who's gonna decide that? Is a cop gonna walk in and decide that? Is the librarian supposed to decide who's dressed in the opposite gender? I mean, I have an F on my birth certificate, but I'm wearing pants from the men's section. I'm not wearing a skirt or a dress. Am I considered being dressed in the opposite gender? Like, it makes no sense. It's a violation of our rights. Like, there's a reason that the bill, the past drag ban bill that was similar, got rejected in the courts. It's unconstitutional. Please don't pass it.
Thanks for your testimony. I'm about to call Cecilia Wood, and I'm going to have to step out to present another bill, another committee, but Senator Perry will take over, and everybody's on the record, everybody's voice matters here. So, Cecilia Wood, introduce yourself, give us your testimony.
My name is Cecilia Wood. I am a board-certified family law attorney, but for this bill, it's more important that I'm a mother, a grandmother, and a great-grandmother. And I believe that the libraries, the public libraries, should be a place that everyone feels comfortable to come. As a child, you probably can't do this now, but when I was 12, I remember being able to ride my bike to the library. My parents were not concerned as to what I would see there. When I was a poor single mother, I mean, that was an afternoon of not only entertainment, but air-conditioned entertainment, which is a big deal in Austin. When my grandchildren come for cousins' weekends or they would come for VBS week, going to the library was something they looked forward to. And their parents trusted me to make sure I was exposing them to things that they wouldn't find, that really wouldn't raise questions that children shouldn't be raising. It's also a great source for homeschool parents who don't have a public library in their home. And so I feel like that we don't want people to not be able to come and enjoy story hour with their children. We also don't want people to be afraid. I mean, in Austin, I don't take my grandchildren to the library anymore. If I'm in their neck of the woods, maybe I can do that, because I don't want to have to answer questions that they're too little to understand. And so, I also don't talk to them about, drugs and things that they're just too young to understand or vote on issues, or do we need to have more roads or whatever. So I would ask that you would pass this bill, and I thank Chairman Hughes for bringing it. Thank you.
Good morning or afternoon, everyone. My name is Sophia. I'm a Texan, born and raised. My family has been here for over 100 years. I was educated here in Austin, and I'm really disappointed that this committee is wasting our tax dollars and a lot of time on this ridiculous bill. I would like this committee to be working instead to improve literacy rates and the quality of the education we are offering our children. Texas is almost dead last, 49 out of 50, among American states for the percentage of the adult population with a high school education. 60% of adults over 25 in Texas don't have a high school diploma or equivalent. This is deeply embarrassing. This bill seeks to target Texans who volunteer their time to dress up in sparkly outfits and read children's books to increase children's interest and engagement with reading. You are the Committee for Education. Why are you seeking to roll back a community's ability to educate their children? This is a government overreach and a threat to the proud American value of free speech, plain and simple. The state is still in litigation over First Amendment concerns for SB 12 passed in 2023 targeting drag performers. U.S. District Judge David Hittner said that that bill permissibly infringes on the First Amendment and chills free speech. Why is this even a legislative priority in a state where we just had our first child die of a measles outbreak, where schools are shutting down over flu outbreaks,
where children's access to food aid programs and educational programs are being threatened by the federal funding freeze. Please vote against this proposed bill and use your time to increase literacy in Texas. I would also like to say that if you don't want your kids to watch something, just give them the TV.
Chair recognizes Senator Hinojosa is present. Leon?
Thank you so much. My name is Vanessa Sivich, and I'm the president of Protecting Texas Children. I'm also a pediatric nurse with 10 years of experience in caring for and advocating for the health, safety, and well-being of children. You might recognize me as the nurse whistleblower who came forward last year from Texas Children's Hospital to reveal the misuse of Medicaid funds and illegal billing for irreversible trans procedures for minors. I am here today testifying in favor of Senate Bill 18 because no library should be used to promote gender ideology and inappropriate content to minors. Across Texas, public libraries have hosted events where adult men dressed as women read to young children, not as educators, but as entertainers. These events are not about literacy. They are about pushing a political agenda onto impressionable children in taxpayer-funded spaces. This bill ensures that libraries that choose to host such events lose access to state and other public funding. If a library wants to promote gender ideology over educational integrity, they should not do so at the taxpayer's expense. Public libraries should focus on education, not activism. I urge you to vote yes on this bill to ensure that taxpayer dollars are used to support learning, not political agendas targeting children. Thank you.
Thank you. The previous, I know we got your first name is Sophia, but what is your last name? What's your total name?
Murto.
Okay, thank you for the record. Is there anyone with questions for this panel? Chair sees none. Thank you guys for being here. Chair calls Megan Fairbanks and Don Garner. Megan Fairbanks and Don Garner. Those are the final two I show registered for public testimony on Senate Bill 18. Is there anybody wishing to testify on, for, or against Senate Bill 18 that has not called their name or registered? Please do so now. So staying with the pattern from my left to y'all's right. State your name and who you're with and position on the bill.
Thank you very much. You can call me Ollie. I'm here just representing myself to oppose Senate Bill 18. So when I was 13 in the church, we went to a university for a week of Bible study and other activities, all that fun stuff. While there, my youth pastor asked me if I would help him scrub his back in the shower. He made fun of me for being nervous about starting sports in school and being in a locker room with other naked individuals. He encouraged another member of the group to rip off his towel after returning to the dorm after returning to the dorm we were staying in, specifically to violate my comfort. I'm one of the lucky ones who didn't end up being outright assaulted, as happens time and time again across the nation in all denominations. So where's the bill to protect kids from church staff? So what I'm here to ask for is authenticity. To give you a concrete example, I'm here because I am readily furious at injustice, and designing a bill to take punitive measures against a public center of joy and learning based on a certain demographic's appearance is a great injustice. Codifying bigotry is injustice. Taking the stance that it's an earnest attempt to protect children is an intentional misdirect to disguise the injustice of targeting queer culture. Insisting on vilifying drag as grooming is blatant projection on the part of predators who need a scapegoat. I am furious that we have to come together to defend our people from baseless accusations and unfounded hypotheticals. I'm furious that we have to act like there's any level of nuance to prejudice. I am authentically furious at the injustice laid before us. If you want to restrict queer culture because you're hateful, just say you're hateful. Write it in your bills and let your authentic self shine through. Far better than that, I ask that you don't pass this bill in the first place for the sake of genuine justice.
Sorry, I didn't get your name, total, first and last.
Oliver Hennigan.
Oliver Hennigan, and he's not registered, or is he? Oh, he's paper registered. All right, thank you. Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. I appreciate the opportunity, as always, to be with you today. My name is Don Garner. I'm the Executive Director for Texas Faith and Freedom Coalition, whose mission is to give people of faith a voice in government. And towards that end, I have the privilege of often testifying in support of bills like Senate Bill 18. A privilege. We're the world's largest get out the vote organization, reaching hundreds of thousands of Texans in every election cycle. As a matter of fact, in last fall's election cycle, our canvassers hit over 1 million doors. Our members are deeply alarmed by the inappropriate displays in front of children that have been documented in recent days. I do find it unfortunate that so many communities feel attacked by such a specific piece of legislation. Whatever your views may be on LGBTQ and activities such as drag shows, I would have to respectfully disagree with some that have testified before me. This bill truly does aim to protect children. It's to protect children from exposure to demonstrations that are clearly inappropriate at their stage of development. It's about protecting children. These kinds of things, I had a discussion with an attorney recently, earlier today. This doesn't prevent these kinds of shows from taking place or people participating in them. It just means that the taxpayer dollars are not going to go for those things happening in public spaces. So it's not about attacking certain people, communities, lifestyles. It's about protecting our children. I urge you to support the passage of Senate Bill 18.
Thank you for that. Members, any questions for this panel? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against Senate Bill 18? Hearing none, public testimony is closed. Senate Bill 18 will be left pending for a future vote. Chair calls up Senate Bill 19 and asks Senator Arthur Middleton to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Senate Bill 19, the ban on taxpayer-funded lobbying. We have passed this bill 3 times in this chamber, and this would be the 4th time. We're still waiting on the House. Senator Birdwell has that persistence with a lot of his legislation as well. We're not going to give up over here because this is protecting taxpayers. We're never going to stop the fight to protect our Texas taxpayers and voters from this unethical practice. And Senate Bill 19 will ban taxpayer-funded lobbying in Texas, and as the Constitution says, all political power is inherent in the people, and all free governments are founded on their authority and instituted for their benefit. And we are a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, and not for the taxpayer-funded lobbyists. And taxpayer-funded lobbying is the use of public funds by political subdivisions for registered Austin lobbyists. And we, as taxpayers, are sick and tired of waste, fraud, and abuse in government. And this ban on taxpayer-funded lobbying needs to be at the top of the Texas DOGE agenda, which will save taxpayers nearly $100 million per year. So how is this practice happening? In 2 ways, either through directly hiring or contracting with someone required to register as a lobbyist under Chapter 305 of the Government Code, or through the payment of public funds to a nonprofit association that primarily represents political subdivisions of the state and employs or contracts with someone required to register as a lobbyist. And look, this is fundamentally wrong, that this $100 million a year is being diverted to the pockets of taxpayer-funded lobbyists. That is local taxpayer money that is being squandered on a middleman between local and state elected officials. Taxpayers don't need this middleman. Elected officials are supposed to directly represent their communities, whether that's at the state level or the local level. And better than an Austin lobbyist, every single taxpayer and voter in the state has a state representative and state senator to represent them in Austin. And SB 19, what it really does is it encourages that direct communication between elected officials by removing that middleman that we frankly don't need. There's another problem here with this practice. It's forced speech. So if you don't like what Target is lobbying on, if you don't like what Bud Light stands for, don't shop at Target. Don't buy Bud Light. But if you don't like what your local government is lobbying on, quit paying your property taxes and see what happens, right? Someone will take your home or your business. And it's common sense to do some of these things. It's common sense to secure the border, to want property tax relief, teacher pay raises, election integrity with citizenship verification, parent-directed school choice for every child. Unfortunately, though, your tax dollars have been used to lobby against and help defeat all of these policies that the vast majority of Texans want. And, you know, we've seen Riley Gaines was here on the Senate floor just the other day, right? And she's led this nationwide movement for fairness and opportunity in sports, but also for women's privacy, right? Because that's how that started, with a man showing up in her locker room at the University of Kentucky. And unfortunately, your tax dollars have gone to a group called the Texas Association of School Boards that lobbied against the bill that would have stopped men from going into women's restrooms, locker rooms, showers, and private facilities. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, today you're going to hear a lot of misrepresentations about what this bill does and doesn't do by those against it. And I have to ask this question. Is there an incentive for Austin lobbyists to lie to protect their taxpayer-funded paycheck? Well, I think we all know what the answer is to that. What does this bill not do? This bill does not affect chambers of commerce, parent-teacher associations, fire associations, police associations, law enforcement associations. This bill does not stop individuals from making that choice to join those associations. But in this case, taxpayers do not have a choice to pay for the lobbyists that they're likely to disagree with. And that's why, again, taxpayer-funded lobbying is for speech. This bill also does not ban or prohibit associations like Texas Association of Counties, Texas Municipal League from providing legal services advice, risk pool insurance, continuing education, legislative tracking with bill analysis, bill recommendations, newsletters, or providing other regular updates to political subdivisions, because none of those services require someone to register as a lobbyist. This bill also does not prohibit local elected officials or their staff, someone that works for them, from communicating with members of the legislature or using public funds to travel to Austin to testify before the legislature, because there is an exemption from registration to lobbying for local electeds and their staff as well. And again, at the end of the day, all levels of government, every level, is elected to directly represent their constituents, period, the end. And voters and taxpayers, we're tired of being forced to subsidize these Austin lobbyist middlemen that are often subverting the very things that taxpayers want. The rights belong to the people and not to government. And taxpayer-funded lobbyists fundamentally disrupt how our constitutional republic is supposed to work by using their own tax dollars to lobby against them. With that, Mr. Chairman, members, I yield for questions, and I know we've got a number of witnesses.
Members, any questions for the senator on which one? SB? I lost it. It's SB 19. Chair's none. We will open up invited witness. Chair calls Geneva Collins, Joel Castro, Navidad Sosa, Abraham George, and Melissa Martin. Please fill out from the left to my right, your right to your left. Geneva Collins, Joel Castro, Nativia Sosa, Abraham George, and Melissa Martin. Start on my left, your right, on the end there. State your name and who you're with, and is it invited? You have 5 minutes. You don't have to take it all. Use it all if you need it.
Wonderful, thank you. Chairman, members of the committee, and fellow Texans, I stand before you today in strong support of Senate Bill 19, a bill that finally puts an end to taxpayer-funded lobbying in Texas. This practice is not just unethical. It is a direct attack on the people's voice, using their own money against them. My name is Genevieve Collins. I run Americans for Prosperity, the largest grassroots and policy organization in Texas with staff across 14 cities. Our grassroots engagement directors hear stories from constituents how they feel helpless and frustrated that their tax dollars are spent, and worse, used against their values and beliefs. SB 19 ensures that political subdivisions, counties, cities, and school districts can no longer use our hard-earned tax dollars to hire lobbyists who work against our interests. Instead of funding essential services, millions of taxpayer dollars are funneled to lobbying groups that actively oppose tax relief, school choice, and local government transparency. This practice creates a fundamental conflict of interest in our democratic process. One, it's the misuse of public funds. Every dollar spent on lobbying is a dollar not spent on essential services like public safety, infrastructure, or education. Local governments and agencies should focus on serving the public, not funding special interest lobbying efforts in Austin. Two, it's the erosion of public trust. Texans expect their tax dollars to be used in direct public benefits, not for political advocacy. Three, this is the government against the people. Taxpayer-funded lobbying often pits local governments against the very citizens that they serve. We've seen examples where lobbying groups funded by taxpayers advocate against property tax reform, school choice, and regulatory relief. Let me give you a few real-world examples of how these taxpayer-funded organizations use public money to fight against taxpayers. First, the Texas Association of School Administrators and the Texas Association of School Boards. These two groups lobby against parental rights and school choice while advocating for policies that prioritize bureaucracy over student outcomes. In 2021, TASB lobbied against property tax reforms that would give homeowners relief while supporting increased spending without accountability. TASA also worked to undermine transparency in curriculum decisions using public funds to promote controversial policies that parents oppose. The Texas Municipal League, TML, is a notorious lobbying group against property tax caps, preventing taxpayers from getting much-needed relief. Cities like Austin and Houston have used tax dollars to fund TML, which then lobbies against pro-business policies and reforms that would curb excessive regulations. In conclusion, SB 19, this is the people versus the government machine. SB 19 restores balance by prohibiting taxpayer dollars from being spent on lobbyists who push for higher taxes, bigger government, and less accountability. This bill does not silence local officials. They can still advocate for their communities. Also, this is their job as an elected official, knowing your community, advocating for your community, and being the person closest to the problem who is best positioned to solve it. At Americans for Prosperity, we believe SB 19 will empower local elected officials to truly represent their communities authentically and honestly while ensuring their community's values and self-interests are put first. Texans should never have to fund their own opposition. Senate Bill 19 ensures that taxpayer money is spent on roads, schools, public safety, not on lobbyists who fight against the very people paying their salaries. I urge this legislature to stand with the people and pass SB 19 to end taxpayer-funded lobbying once and for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Collins. I'm aware there is a committee substitute. Senator Hall sends up committee substitute Senate Bill 19. Senator Milton explained the differences between original and substitute as filed.
So it's only one word change on line, let's see here, 13. It says to pay a nonprofit association. That's what the committee sub says. In the original version, it just said to pay a nonprofit state association. So that's the only change, and obviously it's the same intent as the bill before, where can't pay public funds to a nonprofit association that primarily represents political subdivisions of the state. It's just that one word change.
Any questions for the bill on the substitute? Ms. Collins, you did the testimony and you didn't know there was a substitute. Do you want to change on committee substitute?
We are still very much in favor of.
You're still good. Okay, so let the record reflect Ms. Collins is testifying committee substitute, not Senate Bill 19. In favor.
Sorry, I jumped the gun there on you.
No, it's okay. You got a rookie here. Next, state your name and who you're with in 5 minutes and position on the bill. Committee substitute 19.
Yes, sir. Well, howdy, members. My name is Joel Castro. I am from SD11, and I'm here on support of SB 19 on behalf of Americans for Prosperity. I just want to thank y'all for your work at keeping freedom bigger in Texas. It's imperative that we do that. But on my free time, I proudly serve roughly around 30,000 Texans on the Alvin City Council, just off of the Gulf of America. Earlier this week, myself, 3 other councilmen, and our mayor came to Austin to advocate for our citizens' behalf for Brazoria County Day. It's exactly how it should be. I've noticed that some taxpayer-funded lobbyists that don't want to see this bill pass. In fact, they want to see it fail. It's clear that they are not friends of the taxpayers, but are beholden to the bureaucratic system. I've served on council for nearly 7 years now, and not one of these taxpayer-funded lobbyists has ever reached out to me to ask if what our citizens' needs, our taxpayers, or our businesses. But one person has, consistently, and that's Senators Mays Middleton and his staff. We do not need overpaid hired guns to act as middlemen to our elected representatives. We have a direct line with our senators and our state representatives, a good working relationship with all of our state leaders. These ivory tower lobbyists have never stepped foot in our city, talked to our taxpayers, supported our small businesses, and they sure as heck don't represent our city. I support SB 19. Freedom, opportunity, and prosperity is what keeps the Texas miracle alive. And we threaten that miracle. Every day we allow tax dollars to be used against the interest of everyday Texans. Banning taxpayer-funded lobbying protects the freedom of Texans from government overreach inflated by organizations like TML. Ending taxpayer-funded lobbying opens up opportunities for economic growth, innovation, not regulation, in our economic powerhouse of the state. Eliminating taxpayer-funded lobbying ensures prosperity by keeping more money in the hands of Texans and out of the pocket of Austin middlemen. Americans for Prosperity Texas stands proudly with everyday Texans that support this bill. And I want to express my gratitude to each of you in helping keep freedom bigger in Texas. Thank y'all.
Next.
Hello.
5 minutes, state your name and position on the bill and who you're with.
Hello, Chairman, honorable members of the committee. My name is Natividad Sosa, here on behalf of myself and the Libre Initiative, speaking in favor of Senate Bill 19. I reside within Senate District 20 and House District 36. I've been elected to 2 school boards, and I'm currently a trustee for Mission CISD. I take the responsibility of representing my constituents with the utmost seriousness. They have entrusted me as they have entrusted you. They elected me because they believe in my ability to advocate for their interests, engage directly with lawmakers, and champion the needs of our communities. I have always had access to policymakers like Senator Juan Chuy Hinojosa and Representative Sergio Munoz Jr., whether it be calls, letters, meetings to advocate. The notion that local governments need to hire costly lobbyists to gain access to legislators is simply not true. If we, as elected officials, cannot convey our constituents' needs without relying on taxpayer-funded lobbyists, then we are failing the very people who elected us. As a school board member, I have witnessed firsthand the significant influence that the Texas Association of School Boards, TASB, exerts over superintendents and school boards, often advocating for agendas that do not reflect the values of our communities or the best interests of our children and families. TASB has established itself as the primary authority for training and guidance at both the local and state level. But it is now an all-encompassing, self-serving system that pressures school boards into adopting policies and positions dictated by them. As a trustee, my priority is clear: our children and their future. Every dollar spent on lobbying firms is a dollar not spent on educating Texas children. Thank you, Senator Middleton. Thank you to every senator standing up for the taxpayers of Texas. Libre stands for freedom. We advocate for freedom-minded solutions like Senate Bill 19, which upholds the freedom of Texans by ensuring their tax dollars are not used to fund lobbying efforts that do not reflect their best interests. It restores opportunity by allowing locally elected officials to advocate directly for their communities. It promotes prosperity by keeping more money where it belongs, invested in our children's education, our communities, and the future of Texas. The people elected us to be their voice. Let's honor their trust by ensuring taxpayer money is spent where it truly matters. Thank you for your time and your service to our great state.
Thank you. Ms. Martin?
Good afternoon, committee chairman and members. My name is Melissa Martin, and I'm here to support Senate Bill 19. I'm in my 27th year of education and as a co-founder of Innovative Teachers of Texas, a teachers organization that supports teachers who have traditional Texas values, but I'm here representing myself. I support the ban on taxpayer-funded lobbying because I've seen the destructive impact that this practice has had on one of the most important issues impacting our society, education. To be very clear, I want to specifically speak on one taxpayer-funded lobbyist, TASB, the Texas Association of School Boards. In almost 3 decades, I've seen changes in public education that are not in line with Texas values, nor are they positive for families and communities. And much of this can be traced back to TASB, as they train school board members to make decisions that often undermine the parent-child relationship and the family units in their own communities while failing to promote literacy and numeracy. These decisions undermine the confidence of educators who have traditional values, and they empower the teachers who want to push an agenda that promotes confusion. Taxpayers should not be burdened with the expense of enriching lobbyists such as TASB, who have blatantly worked against the vast majority of parents, community members, and Texas citizens. The fundamental duty of school board members is to lead districts with policies that promote literacy and numeracy. However, the latest NAEP scores reflect a failure to meet the mark. Texas should be leading the way rather than falling below the national average. It's not only immoral to use tax dollars to promote a cultural ideology that undermines parents, but it's additionally negligent to continue to use tax dollars to enrich TASB and other educational organizations who have not improved the state of education for students, parents, teachers, and communities who deserve literate citizens. Texas deserves better, so I encourage you to pass this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. George.
Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Abraham. I serve as the chairman for the Republican Party of Texas. I'm here to voice my strong support on behalf of the party and myself for Senate Bill 19, which will put an end to the unethical practice of taxpayer-funded lobbying in our great state. The fundamental principle of representative government is that elected officials should be accountable to the people who put them in office. However, taxpayer-funded lobbying works against this process by allowing local governments and other public entities to use tax dollars to hire lobbyists who advocate against the interest of the very people who are paying the bill. When local governments spend millions of tax dollars on professional lobbyists, they drown out the voice of the ordinary Texans, regular people who cannot afford or don't have the time or the resources to hire representation here in Austin. The truth is, by electing members to this building, they have already hired their representation. They shouldn't have to pay high-powered lobby groups to get things done here. Every legislator here should be guided by the will of their constituents, not pressured by the well-funded lobby groups that have access to virtually unlimited tax dollars. By eliminating taxpayer-funded lobbying, we ensure the policy decisions reflect the priorities of our citizens, not the interest of the government insiders. It is well documented that this practice has resulted in policy decisions that favor bureaucratic interest over the needs of our citizens. This is a direct misuse of public funds by our local entities against the very people who are paying them. According to reports, Texas cities, counties, and other government entities spend between $90 to $100 million on an average year on lobbying efforts. That money should be used to improve the essential services such as public safety, infrastructure, and education, not fund high-powered lobby groups here in Austin who are advocating for a bigger government. This is not a partisan issue. It is a matter of fairness and good governance. Texans across the political spectrum agree that their tax dollars should not be used to lobby against their own interest. In fact, vast majority of Texans have repeatedly expressed their support for banning taxpayer-funded lobbying. In fact, Yeah, I believe in 2020, the primary elections, the Republican primary election said 94% of the Republicans said we need to ban taxpayer-funded lobbying. SB 19 is a common sense reform that restores integrity to our legislative process and ensures that our local tax dollars are used for their intended purposes, which is serving the people, not funding lobbyists. I urge this committee to advance SB 19 to take a stand for the hardworking people of our great state of Texas, and I thank Senator Middleton for this bill and all of the co-authors and supporters.
Thank you, Mr. George. I'm going to go this way real quick, just to have it on the record. I know that y'all are referencing SB 19 because you didn't have the sub, but is it fair to say as committee substitute for SB 19 applies to your testimony?
Yes, sir.
Yours, ma'am?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right, now Ms. Collins said so as far. Is there any questions for the invited witnesses before I release them, members? Anybody? I have none. Y'all did a great job. Appreciate you playing. Come on back sometime. We'll do another one. But thank you for making the trip down. Chair opens up public testimony for committee substitute Senate Bill 19. Chair calls Michelle Evans, David Stout, Ken Moore, Zach Davidson, and Julie Pickren. Public testimony, Michelle Evans, David Stout, Ken Moore, Zach Davidson, and Julie Pickren. Please come on up and fill the 5 chairs up there. All right. Michelle, on this end, start with you, and we'll go this route. State your name, who you with, and is it for public? 2 minutes on public. Thank you.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Michelle Evans, and I'm the political director for Texans for Vaccine Choice. I represent myself and TFVC, and I'm testifying for SB 19. We're very grateful for the Lieutenant Governor's leadership on this key issue, and of course, Senator Middleton. Here are some quotes from a recent feature in Dallas Morning News. Interim committee reports are reserved for factual information, not political grandstanding. Texans deserve a health committee that acts responsibly. The Senate chairwoman's report lacks intellectual rigor. The Senate committee grounded its work in misleading scientific inaccuracies. The senators are playing politics with vaccines. These sound like the words of a partisan political strategist, but they are from the mouth of Terry Burke, Executive Director of the Immunization Partnership, an organization which calls itself the voice for Texans who want to prevent disease by advocating for, quote, public policy that improves access to vaccination and permits healthcare professionals to build healthy communities. In reality, they are a taxpayer-funded lobbying group that seeks to interfere in healthy relationships between patients and healthcare professionals by advocating to subvert informed consent. Rather than simply improve access to vaccines, they've become the marketing firm for vaccine manufacturers, helping pharmaceutical companies sell their most lucrative and only liability-free products by promoting mandates. They list among their partners Star Health Management, a Medicaid managed care program for children, as well as DSHS, local public health authorities, and publicly funded universities. Through these partnerships, they are able to influence public policies such as mandated medical procedures, mandated enrollment in the state's immunization database, and public disclosure of immunization rates. They do all of this not just as a government partner, but as a recipient of state and local government grants to the tune of over $150,000. Though this amount seems like a drop in the bucket, they are using these funds to publish derogatory op-eds about our duly elected legislators and push private corporations' products. We have public health agencies at every level of government. We shouldn't be spending hard-earned tax dollars on lobbyists who work to diminish our rights and increase pharmaceutical companies' profits.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members. My name is David Stout, and I'm a county commissioner in El Paso, Texas. I'm here on behalf of El Paso, Texas, to testify against the committee substitute on Senate Bill 19. Many of you may not know this, but I was a Senate staffer close to 4 years before I was elected as county commissioner. I worked for former Senator Jose Rodriguez and was here at the Capitol for the 83rd legislative session. And though I studied the legislative process before coming here, there were so many things that I would have never learned if not for the experience of working that session. And guess what? There are still many things that I don't understand even after having been involved in state and local government for close to 15 years now. I'm one of very few commissioners who has that experience working at the legislature, and I still depend heavily on our contracted legislative experts and associations like the Texas Conference of Urban Counties to understand the process, which is ever changing, to keep tabs on what is happening here and to interface with you all to help you understand our needs when I or my colleagues cannot. My community only has 1 senator and 5 representatives, and though they do a great job, I think you all can appreciate that they don't have the capacity to undertake all that work on our behalf. As you know, there are hundreds of bills filed every session that affect counties. Some we ask to be filed, some we agree with and want to be supportive of, and some like this one, we need to come and talk about with you. However, we just can't do all of that alone. I need to be in El Paso attending to my constituents, working on things like public safety, veteran services, healthcare, transportation, and all of the other important issues counties deal with day in and day out. My colleagues and I just don't have the time to do that, read, understand, track, drop cards, testify, and talk to y'all about every single bill that comes across your desk and through your committees, which impact county taxpayers. It's humanly impossible. El Paso is 600 miles away from Austin, and even though we're way out west, we should still be able to participate in the process and have our voices heard. Just like Texas is hundreds of miles away from Washington, D.C., it still deserves to be heard. I don't see a provision in this bill keeping Texas from lobbying Congress with contracted experts. You need them, we need them. Please stop with the hypocrisy, and please do not silence our voices. Thank you very much.
Next.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for inviting me today. My name is Julie Pickren. I have the honor of serving almost 2.5 million Texans, representing almost 2.5 million Texans, and serving almost 6 million children in the great state of Texas, and also representing almost 10,000 square miles of Texas. It is my honor to testify before you today in support of Senate Bill 19 by Senator Mays Middleton. On behalf of the State Board of Education District 7, I have deep concerns regarding taxpayer-funded lobbying and its detrimental impact on parental rights and the democratic process. This practice is not only an irresponsible use of public funds, but it also undermines the voices of parents, the very individuals who finance these lobbying efforts through their hard-earned tax dollars. Taxpayer-funded lobbyists have used public education funds to support and oppose policies that do not align with the will and the value of the taxpayers. This creates a troubling dynamic where parents' money is used to oppose their interests, especially regarding their children's education and well-being. A glaring example of this misuse was taxpayer-funded lobbyist support for the authorization of the Patriot Act against parents by the Biden administration and the U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland. Parents who expressed legitimate concerns about their children's education at school board meetings were labeled as potential threats and terrorists under counterterrorism protocols. This action not only stifled free speech, but weaponized federal resources against law-abiding citizens. Every day, hardworking parents had their worlds destroyed because they spoke for 1 or 2 minutes at their local school board meeting, and taxpayer-funded lobbyists had been complicit in this effort, supporting policies that diminished parents' rights and involvement in their child's education. Moreover, public education associations and government entities offer hire lobbyists to advocate against parents' rights legislation. These lobbyists, funded by the very parents they oppose, work to block school choice initiatives, transparency measures, and curriculum reforms that empower families. Also, taxpayer-funded lobbyist organizations oppose removing pornography from schools, oppose the 10 Commandments in schools, support gender mutilation of children, oppose Texas reproductive laws, and support men and girls' restrooms and locker rooms, which is an affront to the values of the district I represent. This creates a fundamental conflict of interest where the government uses its resources to silence the voices of the people it serves.
You need to finish up.
Thank you, sir. We must demand greater accountability and transparency in the use of taxpayer dollars. Public funds should be used to provide essential services and improve student performance and educational outcomes, not to finance lobbying efforts that erode parental authority and the family. Instead of funding lobbyists, resources should be directed toward hiring high-quality teachers, expanding school choice, and supporting programs that genuinely benefit students.
We thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
To be fair to everybody.
Thank you.
Next up, state your name in 2 minutes and position on the bill.
Yes, thank you for your time today. My name is Zach Davidson, and I'm the Director of Government Relations for Galveston County. I'm here today to express Galveston County's support for SB 19. Galveston County knows all too well what it's like to take on associations like the Texas Association of Counties. Last session, we had to fight them on a local bill to eliminate our local county treasurer's position. Taxpayer-funded lobbying is not a new problem. It's something that has been causing issues for a decade. In 2007, the Texas Association of Counties was sued because of its lobbying efforts. I've submitted to the committee the final ruling in that lawsuit, which reads, quote, "The Texas Association of Counties has the right to attempt to influence legislation and to lobby the Texas legislature so long as it does not collect dues from counties," end quote. Despite this ruling, the Texas Association of Counties and its partner affiliates continue to attempt to influence legislation while continuing to collect dues. I've also submitted a dues invoice from 2024 from the Texas Association of Counties. Counties are forced to pay these dues in part because these associations have a monopoly on continuing education requirements. The Texas Association of Counties will say that only their affiliates engage in hiring lobbyists and influencing the legislature, yet the bylaws of the Texas Association of Counties, which I've also submitted to the committee, clearly show that there is little to no distinction between the Texas Association of Counties and their affiliates. You will hear today how this bill would silence local elected officials. That misconception exists because that is what the Texas Association of Counties, their affiliates, and their high-paid Austin lobbyists have been telling their members. This bill will not silence anyone, and it certainly won't impact services provided by these associations. SB 19 simply eliminates the high-paid Austin lobbyists and ensures that discussions take place directly between you, the members of the legislature, and the local elected officials. The courts have tried to rein in taxpayer-funded associations, yet they continue lobbying. A legislative fix is needed to solve the issue of taxpayer-funded lobbying, and that is exactly what SB 19 would do. That is also why SB 19 has the full support of Galveston County. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Any questions? Senator Milton.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Zach. You pointed out something important where, we had a local bill last session, even though it requires, a constitutional amendment. It was only for the treasurer's office in Galveston County. And we had someone run against an incumbent on his
A little
sole
closer to the
platform.
mics. Senator, it's hard to hear you.
His sole platform was getting rid of the office, right? Hank Doogie. And he won. He beat the incumbent in the primary, right?
That's correct, yeah.
And so once that happened, well, he did what a lot of politicians don't do. He did what he said he was going to do, and he came to the legislature and said, well, now we need to get rid of it and need your help to do it. So y'all came up here to support the constitutional amendment to get rid of the Galveston County Treasurer's Office, and y'all were vehemently opposed, correct, by the Texas Association of Counties.
Yes, we were. They opposed us at every level, both here on the Senate side. On the House side, they used one of their educational conferences to bust people into the House hearing, which went multiple hours. But yes, we faced the full weight of TAC, their lobbyists, their affiliates, on something that had the unanimous bipartisan support of our commissioners court. The people had elected a county treasurer that wanted to get rid of it. We'd even gone so far as to get 11 of the 12 city councils in the county. So there was broad support across the board for it.
So they used a lot of tax dollars to oppose local control, right? That's really what that was doing.
Yeah, that's correct.
And then, we did pass that in the legislature. Thank you, everyone, for your support on that. And it was on the ballot in November. Now, didn't we also see opposition from other county treasurers and trying to tell the voters of Galveston County what they needed to do or not do with their county treasurer? In other words, not eliminate them?
Yes, there was tens of thousands of dollars spent on an that constitutional amendment in Galveston County.
Where other counties were trying to tell us what to do.
Correct.
Yeah. That's the ridiculousness of this issue where they're opposing what our own voters want. And they're trying to get other, taxpayer-funded lobby groups, other counties to force us to do what they want to do, which was not eliminate a government job, right? That was the gist. And the things I heard was, this is a slippery slope. In other words, we're afraid there could be more government jobs eliminated. We can't do that, So that was the main argument against it. And I'm glad you distributed this. This is the dues invoice here. And our county judge, Mark Henry, is a big supporter of this bill, SB 19, and he quit paying the dues, right, to the County Judges and Commissioners Association of Texas.
We have ended up paying those dues so that he can get his transcript.
And that's what I wanted to talk to you about. So he let them know several months ago, we're not paying these anymore because you're lobbying against us. You know, we don't support, you know, us using our local tax dollars to be lobbying against us. And they kept persistently sending this, you know, and it says a few things in it. One of them is it says these dues go to assist and support our legislative program. So that's lobbying. But then also in there it says, we certify the completion of the required 16 hours of continuing education that's required under the law. So have y'all been able to find anyone else to certify those hours?
We have not, and then also that's for the county commissioners' continuing education hours. It's through the County Judges and Commissioners Association. The county judge, the registrar of his continuing education hours is the Texas Association of Counties itself. So we paid that invoice as well to ensure that he gets to remain in office as well as our.
Well, I think we need to point that out. I think it was made clear, and I'm not saying a direct threat was made, but by implication, if you don't do this, if you don't pay these lobbying dues, you don't get certified. What happens then if you're not certified?
If you're not certified, you can be removed from office.
You're removed from office. So that's not really voluntary, is it? You know, if you're threatened with removal from office. And I've actually spoken with a school board member as well. That happened. She said, I'm not going to the TASB training. I don't like what they stand for. They're against kids, they're against parents. But they were the only one that would certify her required, and that's under administrative law, but it is required that they do training. Again, not that voluntary, right? So, I mean, these are some of the bad actions that we see, and it's truly not voluntary, that's why this bill is so important. So thank you for bringing that up today.
Members, any other questions for the panel? You good, Senator Milton?
Julie, do you have anything? Sorry, thank you, Chairman.
If you don't mind, Senator Middleton, you know, I was a trustee before I was elected to serve the great state of Texas, and that's absolutely correct. Being a school board trustee is you're required to attend that training to maintain your elected position. And so it really puts our school board trustees in a quagmire because they're attending training and then being trained by these lobbyists to go against what is their core values, and then also to go against, in some instances, what is state law. And so it really puts them in a hard position because they're required to do that training to maintain their elected position, but yet it has a moral and legal conflict.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for this panel? Thank you guys for coming, appreciate it. Chair calls up Justin West, Lauren Pena, Bill Peacock, Rick Bailey, and Joel Schuster. Justin West, Lauren Pena, Bill Peacock, Rick Bailey, and Joe Schuster. Start from my left, y'all's right on the end there, and state your name in 2 minutes and position on committee substitute Senate Bill 19.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I am Constable Justin West. I'm from Galveston County, Precinct 4, and I appreciate this bill. I appreciate Senator Middleton for filing it and continuing to carry it, both chambers so far, and the fact that this House, or this chamber has passed it across the hall 3 times now. Hopefully this is the year that it finally gets there. So let's face it, this bill is about money, revenue. The organizations and associations are looking at it as a loss of revenue. That's the basic of it. But how many times have we heard people say in politics, this is how we've always done it, so we need to continue doing it this way. So that doesn't make it right, it just means it's what we've done. But one of the things that is interesting about these paid lobbyists is they sometimes end up on both sides of the same issue. They'll get hired by an organization to go support something, and then another organization will employ the same organization to fight against it. So you have the same company coming here or to another committee arguing the opposite points, which really it's confusing. It's hard to grasp how that would happen. But if we look at a larger picture, like TASB, for example, has thousands of school boards. How can they adequately represent the needs of all of the school boards all at the same time with all the different points of view? So it applies the same for cities, applies the same for counties. One of the handouts that I've provided today is a presentation from TML from a couple years ago where they are teaching cities to shake the money tree. So the citizens are now the money tree. So it's time that we finally, in both chambers in this legislature, put a fence around that money tree and tell them the taxpayers are off limits. So I just wanted to finish by saying I support the passage of this bill. Thank you all for your leadership and your support on this bill.
Thank you. Bill?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Middleton, members, thank you for having me here today. My name is Bill Peacock. I'm here testifying for Senate Bill, in support of Senate Bill 19 on behalf of Texans for Fiscal Responsibility and myself. I'm here to just present with you a brief case study, if you will. So most local governments have really abandoned these days any semblance of fiscal sanity. You can see that in the chart I'm handing out when you look at the runaway growth of property taxes over the last 6 years. During that same 6 years, the Texas legislature has spent billions of dollars every year trying to provide property tax relief. The amount that's in the budget for that this year is about $51 billion. Yet property taxes during that time have increased over $23.6 billion during that time, 38%. The tax relief efforts are not really working. Why is that? Well, I'd suggest one of the primary reasons for that is because of local governments using taxpayer money to hire lobbyists to make sure that the tax relief efforts fails. These lobbyists have worked endlessly to make sure that the limits on property tax increases are riddled with loopholes. They don't hold water. For instance, even though school property taxes are supposed to be limited to 2.5% increases and city and county taxes to 3.5% increases without voter approval, their taxes levies in 2022 increased 12.8%, 9.1%, and 9.4% respectively. In 2023, cities increased their tax levy 10.4%, counties 10.8%, and special purpose districts 22.3%. History has shown us that if property owners want real tax relief, the first step, I suggest, is to get rid of taxpayer-funded lobbying. Taking this step will help the Texas legislatures better hear the voters and property owners instead of the lobbyists representing local government.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name is Lauren Pena. I'm a resident of East Austin downtown. I'm also a Republican precinct chair. I am here today because I just recently got my bachelor's degree and I have just recently found out what taxpayer-funded lobbying is, and I'm angry. For example, yesterday I was downstairs at the dog park with my son, and we had a young girl approach us at the fence, and she was maybe 10 or 12 years old. My mom's not home. The Boys and Girls Club is closed. I'm hungry. Can you buy me some food? And I've been working with the local elementary schools delivering foods to these elementary schools, and the need for these kids as far as like them being hungry is really high. I've heard in Austin alone is some 90% of children that are lacking the resources they need as far as food. Additionally, I'm angry because if you go on a trip and go down Cesar Chavez just 2 miles away on 35, take East Cesar Chavez, there are 14 dilapidated houses just right there before you get to Pleasant Valley. If we're in such a homeless crisis, why aren't the taxpayer funds going to the schools to help them have food? And why aren't they going to fix these houses so that the people can live there? Additionally, because I've found out about what taxpayer lobbying is, I'm educating my community. I live in a low-income community. I like to call them eligible non-voters. These eligible non-voters are not going to be non-voters next go-around. They're angry, they work hard, and their taxes go to this, and we're not living in good conditions. So I really would just advocate that you guys pass this bill because it's not good for my community. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate that. Next.
Thank you for allowing us to testify today. My name is Joe Schuster. I'm the Pecos County Judge. I've testified against this bill now 3 times. This is the 3rd time. It was 175, It was also Senate Bill 29, and now it's Senate Bill 19. So let me just say this. I've heard a lot of discussion today. I don't believe on the county side in the Texas Association of County Judges and Commissioners is wasteful spending. Our dues are $2,160. That's based on the population of Pecos County. And I've been a county judge now. I'm in my 23rd year. And all these years, Texas Association of County Judges and Commissioners has helped us through the years in guiding us to get grants like TIF grants for roads. And this past time, the past legislative session, we got a TIF grant for $5 million, which fixed a lot of roads in Pecos County. We're an oil-based and gas county. And so the roads have been torn up. So Texas Association of Counties has helped us get that done. Without their guidance and without their education, we wouldn't have known about this. The other thing is through the legislative session, there is two people, either a county judge or a commissioner or one of each, that come down here each and every week through the legislative session to be here so that we can be able to speak at a moment's notice. And that's what's happened here. This was my week. I'll be back again in the end of May somewhere. And may I proceed with this?
Just finish up pretty quick.
I will. What I'm getting at is I'm here because I was available and to give testimony. I do believe that passing Senate Bill 19 would be detrimental to the counties of the state of Texas. It's not abused.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
State your name.
Committees, thank you. My name is Rick Bailey. I'm County Commissioner in Johnson County. My 16 years tenure here, working and serving the people of Johnson County and state of Texas, has led me to be involved with our County Judge and Commissioners Association. Need to note that that is not a part of TAC. Texas Association of Counties is a tool that many use. It's an insurance company. There are a lot of things there that they're helpful on, but namely the County Judge and Commissioners Association, where I worked diligently with members over the years, served as the regional president of the association, served as state of the association president. I had the privilege of serving as the 100th year anniversary of that association. I'm handing you here a breakdown, as you had gotten earlier, to show that Johnson County's contribution to the County Judge and Commissioners Association is $3,500 annually. I've been there 16 years, my predecessor 20 years, and before he passed, we had a conversation about have we ever had lobbyists. Former County Judge Roger Harmon will attest to that as well. Mr. Birdwell was our representative for a long time. Good to see you, sir. But we have never hired anyone to do lobbying. We depend on so many of these bills that come across here to be parlayed to us from the association. My tenure has served me as far as helping across the state. I'm not just a county commissioner at home, and the old cliche of a pothole fixer is kind of a vague thing of the past. We're more administrative today, but serving on different committees along the way, I'm proud to say I'm vice chair of the Regional Transportation Council, North Central Texas COG. I serve on for the Comptroller's Office on the tobacco settlement for investment and distribution. We have many hats that we wear. And to take the time to come down here on a moment's notice, I was not in the rotation as Mr. Schuster this week, but it is important to understand the County Judge and Commissioners Association has and always has been very conservative in our role, and being especially apprised to the taxpayers. We are very conservative. Red County, And we do due diligence to the taxpayers. We have not raised new revenues, although we had them the last 2 years, and we've also helped with our homestead taxpayers the last 2 years in a row with helping on that front as well. So I'm just proud to say that I'm honored to be amongst you. We may agree or disagree. There's a lot of bills yet to be discussed. I'll be visiting some of your offices on some of the other issues and look forward to making that time together. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Commissioner. Senators, any questions for any of our witnesses here? Thank you for being here. Oh, Senator Birdwell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, good to see you. I miss Johnson County.
Always.
Let me ask this, and depending upon your answer, I may, Mr. Chairman, ask permission to ask a question.
Oh, please, go ahead, Senator. Thank you.
I know that time passed, but
Please.
Are these dues paid for you personally, or are they paid for you by the county on behalf of you?
Well, this is each of the associations, whether it be the Sheriff's Association, the County Judge and Commissioners Association, the clerks, the tax assessor collector. These each are paid for through the county taxpayers to fund us the ability to be members of the associations.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So is membership, I guess this is my question to you, is membership in an association treated as prima facie evidence of lobbying?
Sorry, thank you, Chairman. No, so basically, if it operates like the CLEAT, TMPA, fire, teacher, the bill doesn't apply because it's the individual choosing to be a member, and then they're paying the dues to it, and then they hire lobbyists. That's their decision, you know. But it's different when the taxpayer dollars go straight to the lobbyist or straight to the association, where no one is actually making that choice. And I'll point out that these associations don't actually represent elected officials. They represent governmental bodies. And that's a lot of the problem too, and I know that's an issue Constable West has had. Maybe we'll get him to speak more on that, but that's always an issue when you don't represent elected officials, you represent government.
I just wanted to, in listening to Commissioner Bailey's testimony, it struck me as there might be confusion that membership is being contemplated as in violation of the bill, when in fact that's not the case.
Right, no, correct.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Commissioner.
Well, thank you for the question, sir. You bet.
Senators, any other questions for these witnesses? Senator Middleton.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. Constable West, you kind of touched on a little bit of it earlier where, you know, you support this bill, and you've seen situations, especially on border security, for example. You're a big, you know, supporter of our border security legislation. You're up here a lot last session on that. Can you maybe give us some examples where, you know, our tax dollars were used to lobby against some of the border security laws?
So we see a lot of groups who may or may not be funded by taxpayers, but there are some that will argue, hey, we don't need to be focusing here. There's crime in our community. Stop going to the border. Well, a lot of the crime that we experience, some of the petty crimes and things that will build into larger crimes are related to, whether it's the drug trafficking or the gangs that are related to the border. So with that being said, last session, we would see groups and groups and groups who would come in and they would fight against bills that would end up dying in committee because there's so much noise from these lobbyists, whether they're being paid for through an association represents, like, for example, JPCA represents us as elected officials. We have a hired lobbyist that helps us with bills. TAC does still do some of our legislative digesting, which those are services that are still going to be provided if this bill passes. So we're not taking any of that away. We retain all those services. We just lose the larger organizations who come in and say, oh, you're just some elected official from somewhere, like Johnson County or El Paso or Pecos, and they can just steamroll us. Where if we come in at the point of, hey, the only voices that are being heard are the elected officials or people who represent elected officials, that's where we're going with this, to try to protect that voice.
Each of us, Constables JP Association, you have your needs. You have every 2 years there will be changes that dictate what you do. Same thing with us, you know. So to be fair, the taxpayer dollars that are going from County Judge and Commissioners Association or to help us navigate through the waters, because I can't be here every day of it, nor can any of the other commissioners or my county judge. We depend solely on our Judge and Commissioners Association and our legal team. You know, we've worked on the legislative program for years for education. We have partnered along with TAC and others to continue education. That's a big part of what we do with our association, is the continued education. So for the nominal dollars that we're spending per county, there's a little over 200 counties, I would say, that are rural, if you will, that depend on this service. It's vital.
Right.
It's very vital. So,
And again, that's, to point out, that's your association represents you as the elected official.
yes.
Not TAC,
Yes.
that is
You know,
the school as you described.
TAC has been a misconception for years that I've been coming here, the associations and how TAC relates. Most look at TAC as this is the tool. That is not true. TAC is a great tool for all that are into the need of their services. But when you have your JP and Constables Association, when we have the Sheriff's Association, we can't, as county commissioners, come down here and decide and pick what your needs are going to be. That's why you have your association. That's why we have our association. So it's imperative that we have a voice here. I know that I can come down. I've read that enough now, and had Ms. Kerwin is very helpful and very appreciative of all your work, Mr. Middleton, with her on that. But I recognize, and you as well, sir. But I certainly respect the work that goes on here. I just want to say that we need to continue to have the ability to have representation support us during the session at this minimal cost. Please. Thank you.
I'll point
Go ahead, Senator. Go
Thank you, Chairman. One thing that it's actually not just this. TAC, TML, and TASB make most of their money off of selling risk pool insurance, which is single bid, no bid, and money is shed off of that risk pool to pay for lobbying. And, you know, the last time I looked for TASB, it was $150 million a year. So that's not a minimal amount. I mean, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. How do you have, you know, for example, TASB has 500 employees, you know, off a small amount of dues? The answer is you don't, you know, because you're funding them with the risk pool. Or TML has 233 employees. TAC has 179 employees. I think you're probably right. The dues are not paying for most of that. It is the single bid, no bid risk pool insurance that is then going to
We are self-insured.
fund lobbying.
In Johnson County, we're self-insured.
Right, and not everybody does it,
No,
but
not
I mean, it
everybody
is
does.
a big
But
component of their income.
And to that point, it's hard to be regulated by those that do. It's hard to be imagined that the lobbying that goes on in Harris, Dallas, the majority counties, that this is a tool that one size fits all, because truly it does not. It does not fit all.
If I may, we're self-insured too. Pecos County is self-insured. And the other thing is we're just 30 miles from the border, so we are considered a border county. And we were beneficiaries of SB 22 and all kinds of other law enforcement grants, and we used every one of them. We've already signed up for them again. Don't know if they're going to do it again. We don't know. But we are pro enforcement of the law on the border. So,
Senator Betancourt, did you still have a question? Are you ready? Why did I say Betancourt? I was just with Betancourt. And
We've had a long day here.
Senator Betancourt just texted me, and he was, and I was looking at Senator Bardwell. Y'all don't look anything alike. You vote a lot alike, and that's good, but you don't look anything like Senator Betancourt. I apologize to not to either one of you, just you're different people.
Brian, I'll have to share this with Mel. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
Thanks, Commissioner. Thanks.
Senator Bardwell, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It gets, it's a question back to Senator, when we discussed the bill, that the bill does not affect the monitoring capacity of, because if you remember, Mr. Chairman, when you were chairing this committee in the interim of 22, I believe it was, Mr. Chairman, when you were chairing this committee in the interim of I think it was either 20 or 22, I brought Mayor Jensen in from Grand Prairie because he's got 17 other geopolitical subdivisions that share territory with him. Very complicated. The bill doesn't affect the monitoring, and that's why I asked the question about the dues are not an inherent lobbying act. They allow that monitoring of what the legislature does so that you know what bills are considered, but it doesn't affect your ability to contact me as an elected official.
I'm very aware of that, Senator. But, you know, the time and as fast as things move here, and of course, Senator Hall will testify to this. In the last session, we had a hearing that was scheduled for about 9 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, whatever. I think it was 4:30 a.m. the next morning we got to that. You know, so to just go on, you know, it's hard when you have so many. I missed 3 meetings between yesterday and today to be here. One was very important to me, but this is more important. But that being said, I mean, it's just as fast as the pace is here, as slow as it seems, but it's fast with as many bills as you guys have to deal with. For me to drop everything at a moment's notice with all of the responsibilities that I have, and our new judge and getting his feet under him, and the other commissioners, they're involved as well. But, you know, and not everybody is apt to come down to give testimony. It's a little intimidating down here to a lot. And, but I certainly, you know, I mean, we're all elected here by people. We all share the same values and the same goals here to do what's best for Texas and do what's best for our constituents at home, and that's the reason.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
May I say one thing?
Please go ahead.
We live 350 miles away from Austin. It's a 6-hour drive from my house to the Capitol. It's just 6 hours. And we rely on Texas Association of County Judges and Commissioners to give us information on the bills, both that will react to us positively and negatively. And so we rely on them for that information. And it's real hard for us to be able to come here unless I know 6 hours ahead of time or 7. So it's needed.
Well, thank you, Judge. Senator Middleton, members, any other questions for these witnesses? Good. Thank you each for being here. You're excused. Thank you. As we continue to hear testimony on Senate Bill 19, the chair calls Ken Moore. Ken Moore. Richard Bonnert. Richard Bonnert. James Quintero. James Quintero. Alexander Kotara. Alexander Kotara. And Andrew McVeigh. Andrew McVeigh. I'll go through those names again. We're looking for Ken Moore, Richard Bonnert, James Quintero, Alexander Kotara, and Andrew McVeigh. And Tom Glass. The chair calls Tom Glass. Come on down, Mr. Glass. Welcome to each of you. We'll begin over here on my left, your right. Introduce yourself. Give us your testimony. Welcome.
I'm Richard Bonnert, Comfort, Texas, Kirk County. I'd like to thank you, Chairman and committee members. And I also like to thank you for the sacrifices that you all make to be here and represent your constituents and the state of Texas. I am for this bill. I don't have a whole lot to say since everyone has already said about everything that I could say. The only thing that I don't understand is how people find the time to come here. They must be able to get this online, that they know that this committee is taking place. And I think there's a lot of stuff that can be found online for these bills, and see which bills you want to participate in, you want to testify in. And I would think that they could make it, I don't know, possibility to do that instead of using taxpayer funds to get lobbyists to do lobbyists for them. And then we don't even know if they're going to be in our best interest or not. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Barnett, thank you for your testimony. Thank you for being here, for taking time. Mr. Katara, you're welcome. Introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
Good afternoon, Chairman Hughes and committee members. I'm Alex Katara, trustee with Karnes City ISD. I'm speaking today in opposition to Senate Bill 19. Prior to doing so, I feel some numbers might be helpful. 6,300. The number of families I serve as an elected school board trustee for Karnes City ISD. 1,028. The number of students who are directly affected by my governance and the actions of the Texas legislature. 717. The number of bills I am currently required to track that have been filed with the 89th legislature that I feel would have a direct bearing on our district. 48. The hours of advance notice I'm generally given before a hearing in Austin on any one of those bills. 16. The time and hours I generally exhaust driving halfway across the state, registering for comments, waiting through invited testimony, and returning home when a single applicable bill comes for hearing. 2, the minutes I may speak on behalf of my district should I find a way to free up those 16 hours. And 0, the annual salary I collect for serving as a said trustee. And for that princely sum, those 6,300 families expect me to do everything in my power to ensure that their children, our staff, and our community get the best education possible. So when I see a bill come up that is so clearly targeting an entity that I find infinitely helpful in doing my job, an entity that does so in a fiscally responsible way, I feel I am obligated to oppose the legislation so that I can continue to leverage that entity for the benefit of my community. As elected officials, this committee surely recognizes the need to assist its constituency. And I understand the well-intentioned stated purpose of the bill, but I oppose this bill as I feel it will serve mostly to silence opposition and, Over the last several years, I have dedicated hundreds of hours to working with TASB without pay because I appreciate the process they've established to ensure they serve as a mouthpiece for trustees and not just for some organizationally driven agenda. I further recognize that the legislation, Senate Bill 19, purports to not prohibit my right as an individual to do so. However, from the numbers above, the fact that the school board trustees are unpaid volunteers, and coupled with the overwhelming volume of legislation of affect, we see legislation would effectively curb the voice of my community within the legislative process, a voice that my community members elected me to ensure is heard. I'd be happy to clarify any remarks herein and humbly make myself available for future testimony or questions regarding how the grassroots process leads to advocacy at the state level or how much our district spends on said lobbying.
Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Glass, introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
Tom Glass. Today on this bill, I'm representing Texas Legislative Priorities and myself. Texas Legislative Priorities is a Facebook group of about 4,000 people who's dedicated to seeing that the priorities of the Republican Party of Texas get implemented into law. I testified for the first time on this bill concept when we had a young Representative Middleton in front of Dade Phelan's State Affairs Committee. And I think a quote that I gave then is still applicable, and it can add to this conversation. This is a quote from Thomas Jefferson. He said, "To compel a man to furnish funds for the propagation of ideas he disbelieves and abhors is sinful and tyrannical." I think that underlies the moral situation we're in. Jefferson gave those comments in the context of the debate in Virginia, the state of Virginia, over the disestablishment of the Anglican Church, where taxpayer money was being used to fund church activity. And I think what we're seeing today, this issue is the disestablishment of taxpayer funding for lobbying activity. And I think the underlying principles are the same. Every time I hear somebody say, well, I really need this to be able to do my job, my take is, when I was a working citizen of the state of Texas, I still managed to find ways to burn vacation time and my own dime to come to this legislative body and testify on the behalf of the things that I wanted to do. And I didn't expect taxpayers to fund that for me. One of my favorite heroes in life is Davy Crockett, and he has a wonderful little essay that he wrote one time called "Not Yours to Give." And I don't think this taxpayer money is to give to lobbying on behalf of elected officials. Thank you.
Thanks for your testimony. Mr. Quintero, welcome. Introduce yourself and go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, it's good to be back with you again. My name is James Quintero. I represent the Texas Public Policy Foundation. I'm here to testify enthusiastically in support of SB 19. The practice of taxpayer-funded lobbying is repugnant to the very ideals of constitutional order, limited government, and individual liberty. It perverts the purpose of our public institutions such that our system today sees local governments lobbying state government for more government. Said more simply, we have a situation today where governments are lobbying government for more government. And this is not a paltry affair either. Last session, the Texas Public Policy Foundation put forward an estimate that local governments spent as much as $75 million on contract lobbying in 2021 to push for higher taxes, more spending, and greater regulatory authority. Today, I'm pleased to provide the committee with an updated estimate that shows a much higher level of activity. As you'll see in your draft document, our scholars have determined that cities, counties, school districts, and special districts have committed as much as $98.6 million in 2023 to advancing their collective interests. Today's figure represents a 31% increase in contract lobbying, up from the 21 session to the 23 session. Now, I want to make sure that everyone understands the $98.6 million is only specific to contract lobbying. There are many other different avenues by which local governments lobby, such as through associations and intergovernmental relations. Those activities are not accounted for in the $98.6 million. Now, what's most concerning to me is that the public is strongly opposed to this practice. As you'll see in that second handout, the foundation released a poll earlier this month that showed that of the nearly 1,000 registered voters surveyed, 8 in 10 rejected the practice and presumably wanted it banned. So I want to thank you for your time and attention on this matter, and I look forward to any questions.
Thanks for your testimony. Mr. McVeigh, welcome. Introduce yourself and go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman and members. My name is Andrew McVeigh. I'm the president of Texans for Fiscal Responsibility, and I'm here in support of Senate Bill 19 to end taxpayer-funded lobbying. For far too long, local governments have used tax money, the people's money, to hire professional lobbyists who often work directly against the interests and values of taxpayers. This is an unethical and immoral practice that must end. SB 19 is a straightforward solution, prohibiting local governments from spending tax dollars on these lobbyists. It does not stop local officials from advocating for their communities, but it does help ensure that tax dollars are used for public services, not to fund the special interest of government officials, bureaucrats, or the Austin establishment. This fight is not new. In 2017, local governments spent over $40 million on taxpayer-funded lobbying, a figure that skyrocketed to $75 million in 2021, and as James mentioned, it's now grown to nearly $100 million last session. That's millions of dollars that could have gone towards roads or public safety, yet instead it was spent on lobbyists who often oppose pro-taxpayer and pro-family reforms. The people of Texas have made their voices clear. In 2020, 95% of Republican voters backed a ban on this practice, and last year, 67% of general election voters also supported a ban. This is not a partisan issue. It's a matter of accountability and of ensuring that public funds serve the public, not the powerful. I want to thank Senator Middleton for filing this legislation once again, and thank you to the whole committee for working on this important issue. I urge you to pass SB 19 and send a clear message that taxpayer dollars belong to taxpayers, not to lobbyists who work against them. Thank you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks for your testimony. Members, any questions for any of our witnesses on this panel? Senator Hall, you're recognized.
The gentleman who's a school board member.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for your service. Appreciate that. And I may have missed it, but you interpret this that it would keep you from coming down here and lobbying?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay.
I understand it would allow me as a private citizen to continue, or even as an elected
No, I
official.
mean, as a school board member.
Correct, as an elected official. It really boils down to the sheer volume of legislation that sits out there and the time that as a volunteer to do it over and over. We actually have, at our district, we spend less on lobbying than we would even just a couple of trips in a year reimbursed for mileage.
No, that's all. I just want to make sure you did. I wasn't sure. I couldn't quite hear all of what you had. I want to make sure you.
Yes, sir.
Because that's a common misunderstanding that we've heard from elected officials. You mean I can't come down here and talk to my elected officials?
No, I understand.
Absolutely not. That is not covered. This is talking about using taxpayer money to hire a gun to come down here and do it for you. Thank you very much. I just want to make sure that was clear.
Thank you, Senator Hall. Senator Hinojosa, you're recognized.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Kotada.
Yes, sir.
Okay, for your service. And thank you for laying out the way you did, because this just illustrates to people who don't know and do, those of us who are elected and do this for essentially nothing, and a lot of times costs us money. But I thank you for your service. That is something that we volunteered to do as putting ourselves out there for public service, but it goes without saying how grateful we are to all of those who decide to do that service. But I wanted to clarify that, Mr. Quintero. Thank you for being here.
Yes, sir.
And I was talking to the author of the bill, and he was clarifying some things for me. So I just want to just verify that this flyer that you gave us, this handout that shows the 98.6 million in 2023, in the 2023 session.
Yes, sir.
You're talking about just that's the amount of money going to just the registered lobby. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. So what my team did is we combed through the lobby registration data maintained through the Texas Ethics Commission to determine how much money actually went to the contract lobbyists, or at least establish a range. The upper end of that threshold is $98.6 million. And again, I think that's actually an understatement of the true level of taxpayer-funded lobbying that occurs in this building, because it does not include the money going to associations in the form of membership dues or events or other things, and also the intergovernmental relations component.
And to be clear, that those memberships that would allow for the, if you will, just the monitoring of the legislation that goes through to the tool that a lot of ISDs and cities and counties utilize, those memberships cover that, correct? This amount of money is just for the actual lobbyists that are registered.
Yes.
That's correct. So they can still, if they pay their membership dues for the service, they still get that legislative monitoring and all those tools that are used, correct?
Yes, that's correct, and that's a terrific point. One of the distinctions that, hopefully we've been able to make over the years is it's perfectly fine for these associations to monitor and engage in education-related activities as to what happens here. It's the advocacy component that I think we all ought to have some concern over, because our public dollars are being used to take positions for and against legislation, and I don't think that's appropriate whether you're conservative or a liberal.
Great. And then Senator Middleton was also showing me a stat that the actual percent of employees registered as lobbyists throughout TASB, TML, TAC is only at about 3.35%. Do you have any data to substantiate that? I'm sure you I don't really question those numbers. I'm just wondering if you agree with that.
You know, I have not looked at that particular figure, but Senator Middleton has been doing this for quite a while, and he's been doing a terrific job at it, so I totally trust his figures.
No, I agree, and I appreciate you clarifying that for me, because we did get some questions from our local entities asking about that, but it does help clear it up. And again, thank you for all who are serving in those capacities. We really appreciate it. Thank you for being here.
Senators, any other questions? Thank you each for your testimony. You're excused. On Senate Bill 19, the chair calls Rick Briscoe. The chair calls Eric Schwartz. The chair calls Julie Pickren and C.J. Grisham. So we got Mr. Briscoe. We're looking for Eric Schwartz, Julie Pickren. And we'll call again Ken Moore. We called Ken earlier, and he may be testifying somewhere else. So I'll ask, is there anyone else present wishing to testify on, for, or against Senate Bill 19? Very well. Mr. Briscoe, welcome back. You're recognized. Give us your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I am Rick Briscoe. I am testifying for the bill on my own behalf. It's really a very simple proposition. I do not believe, and I respectfully submit for your consideration, that it is not a legitimate governmental function to hire outside lobbyists with taxpayer funds. Aside from that, it's inefficient. It's taking money away from those core functions it's supposed to perform. It's been my experience that whatever political subdivision the state's involved, the members of their local delegation go way out of their way to be available to communicate with, whether it's the ISD, the city, the county, or whatever. I don't mean this in a bad way, but they get preferential access, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. There's an old expression, "tain't fair." It was old when I was young. It's simply, that's not fair. And it's not fair that is all too often the case that these political subdivisions of the state are paying lobbyists to lobby against the interest of the citizens paying the taxes. And, well, it's just not right. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Welcome back. Introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not going to repeat everything that's already been said, so I'll be quick and brief. Just 2 points I wanted to make that have not been covered.
Even though we know you put it on the record. Go ahead.
Yep.
You got it.
My name is C.J. Grisham, testifying on my own behalf as well as lead counsel for Texas Gun Rights on their behalf and in support of this bill. So 2 things. One, we've spent about $100 million in this state on taxpayer-funded lobbying. That's $100 million that could have gone into potholes, streetlights, all those kinds of things. Second is, as a gun rights organization, we are very eager about protecting our gun rights. And what we have seen is that a lot of these taxpayer-funded organizations are actively lobbying for bills that would undermine our fundamental right to keep and bear arms in defense of ourselves and others. And then I'll just reiterate some of the other things that have been said in support of this bill and leave it at that to save your time. Thank you.
Thanks for your testimony. Senators, any questions for either of these witnesses? Thank you both for being here. Thanks for your testimony. Senate Bill 19 is before the committee. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against Senate Bill 19? Seeing and hearing none, public testimony is closed on Senate Bill 19, and bills left pending at this time. Is there any other business for the Senate Committee on State Affairs? Very well. The committee stands in recess, subject to the call of the chair. Good afternoon.